Hello, YouTube. Great to be here with you guys today. I'm representing fear at the bottom, faith on top. Faith over fear is why we are here to learn how to intentionally lead ourselves and ourselves to a higher level. Now, for the last several weeks, we've been reading St. Germain on Alchemy, and I am going to continue that. I do want to make two announcements. One is that at 4 p.m. today, Chantal Matheson and I hosted the final Peaceful Inner Warriors United Lawfully Organized Summit. And we're going to regroup and figure out how we can really be of greatest assistance without getting meshed and bogged down into the day-to-day and what's happening, because at the human level, we cannot solve the problems that are happening right now. This is way bigger than that. And so this is the last meeting that we've had today until further notice. So just letting everyone who has been following along with the Lawfully Organized Summits over the last 3 months, thank you for tuning in and hope you got some value from that. It definitely stretched and grew both of us. So we're glad that we did it, and we're excited to see where we can go from here. The other announcement that I wanted to make before we dive into the reason you're showing up today is that tomorrow night at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, same time as now, I will be hosting another summit with Michael Seegers. And this one is going to be Jesus Part 2 and the Ascension process. So there is actually an alchemical process to go with Ascension that you maybe know about. I don't. And Michael does. So he's going to be sharing that with us. And anyone else that has anything of value to contribute on the call tomorrow night would be more than welcome to do so. I very much look forward to sharing that experience with you tomorrow. And if you're interested in hearing the first part about Jesus and why his story matters, then you can check out the video by that title ways down from this message today on YouTube. So I hope that you'll enjoy that in preparation for what's to come tomorrow, and do hope that you'll join. If you're interested and you want the login details, just subscribe to my emails at ljeh.ca, and then you'll be able to get the information directly from there. So without further ado, I'm going to have a drink of my brew. It's coffee with French vanilla. I am also going to start up over on Instagram, just because this is a great book, and anyone who has the blessing of being able to tune in to it is going to be in for a treat. So, hello, Instagram. Great to be with you tonight. We are reading St. Germain on Alchemy. So, look forward to sharing this experience with you. And at the end, I'm thinking that I'm likely going to draw a divine guidance card. And if you are interested in getting yourself a card reading at the end of St. Germain on Alchemy, then definitely make a comment and I'll be glad to pull a card for you. And on that, we get to Chapter 3, Spiritual Alliance. Little does the beginning alchemist realize the need for a spiritual alliance. If men are critical of the appearance of oppositional aspects in religious endeavor, such as struggles among the brethren, their ungodly attitudes, their criticism, condemnation, and judgment of one another, let them realize that that which is below is not the product of that which is above, but remains a part of human creation, which is no real part of God. It is to genuine spiritual brotherhood, then, that we would direct your attention, for the alchemist who seeks but his own unfoldment can never manifest aught but a relatively weak potential. Those who ally themselves with the brotherhood of light are utilizing the functional power of the great alchemist, not as a mighty ocean pouring through a narrow inlet, but as a great ocean roaring to the perfection of itself. Thus, in all true striving, the hand aware of the head blesses the feet that march in progress toward an appointed goal. I just realized I forgot to record and need to, because at the end of all of this, I will be using these to make it a more comprehensive, digestible experience of this book. So, freedom, then, is a name and a game, but the stakes are very high. The great alchemist demands absolute obedience from every adherent and from all who would practice the game of victorious becoming. Man is a limited creature. He is limited by the mass alliances he has formed, often in the bane of ignorance. Therefore, we must commence by literally turning the being of man upside down and inside out. We must ferret out the little tricks that have been employed by the finite self in maintaining its own sovereignty over the lives of others. For it is the sense of struggle that has actually created a struggle in the lives of countless millions. But when they shed that sense, when they perceive that the universe is a harmonious working together of light serving light, they will hasten to be about the Father's business of transmuting the shroud that covers the earth, the shroud that is composed of the elements of mankind's own insanity and destructive emotional patterns. The sacred fire has been distorted through the misuse of sex, and sacred music has been aborted through the introduction of astral and voodoo rhythms. The new moralities of the people must be seen for what they are, simply the old and sordid outworkings of Sodom and Gomorrah come again. Children are taught to pay homage to personalities, and thus they follow after rock and roll idols who themselves are the victims of the demons of darkness. The brutal noises of these Pied Pipers jar the fine sensibilities of the soul and destroy the inner electronic machinery that would enable the youth to attune to the Spirit of God and to decipher the tongues of angels. The game now is to draw the youth into a spirit of rebellion before they have the opportunity of developing a correct understanding of life and of their destiny as heirs of God. There is a footnote I will find. We are on book 2, chapter 3. Destiny, deity established in you. All right. But I cannot honestly say that their elders have excelled in virtue, nor do I find that the power of example has been spread abroad in the world as it should. The ancient proverb, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Proverbs 22:6 has failed of expression in many generations. Nevertheless, we would not destroy the foundation of hope in the world. For although there have been failures, there have also been numerous successes, many of them unchronicled in the annuals or in the annals of the race. And so, whereas we do indeed, and rightly so, condemn mankind's increasing lack of morality, their licentious spirit and struggle for ego expression, and whereas we do condemn the violent and indiscriminate overthrow of institutions and standards long upheld by the Brotherhood as guidelines for the working out of karmic imbalances, we also accede that an enormous amount of God's energy has been misqualified in this and past ages. Therefore, the trends towards misqualification must be challenged at the same time that they are being reckoned with as karmic factors by those who are determined to override man's density and to bring into manifestation the long awaited kingdom. Have men failed in the past? Then the record of that failure is a magnet to draw them down, and strong counteracting forces must be kindled. The power of heaven must be reharnessed, and men must turn from darkness toward the light. There is, then, a purpose for spiritual alchemy. But before I go into it enough to enable you to draw forth greater measures of cosmic energy and to learn how to qualify this energy correctly, I must show the relevance of this study to the present age. The destructive energies which poured through the beetles and entered the subconscious minds of the youth, popular though they were in the world of form, are gradually working their way to the surface, revealing their true colors and satanic origins. These unholy emanations have drawn many young souls into the mistaken belief that the taking of drugs, the practice of witchcraft, and illicit sex can give them freedom from all imposed limitations. Instead, these indulgences have held them in bondage to the legions of darkness. Would it not be, then, of greater value and virtue if the resurgent power of regeneration were allowed to come forth through many hearts as a great cosmic flow? The forward movement of this flow is able to engender in men a spirit of willing acceptance of cosmic beauty, which in turn brings about the flowering of hope into the youth, hope for a greater measure of inward satisfaction, hope for a greater measure of attunement with the realities of the universe. For the tides of reality continually pour through the cosmos, whether man is aware of them or not. The certitudes of life are often unknown by the young in heart, who, while they are borne upon the tide of human events, are seldom able to compass those events with a relevancy that would give greater meaning to their lives. I'm therefore advising all to eschew the evil and darkness that enter the force field of the four lower bodies when the attention is placed on the jangle of modern jazz. I advise all who would truly be alchemists in the spirit to seek out the classical music of the world's greatest composers, of Beethoven, Bach, Chopin, Haydn, Handel, Wagner, Liszt, Mozart, Mendelssohn, Mahler, and many others who have been commissioned by the Brotherhood to bring forth the music of the spheres. I advise all to learn to seek in meditation those peaks of cosmic elevation that will enable them to understand and interpret the language of the angels. I advise all to take the time to learn what is real and to develop passions of genuine love toward humanity. But let not these passions take the form of mere devotion to communal efforts or to the raising of one segment of life into a more advanced state of economic development. Rather, let them take the form of raising men to new levels of spiritual appreciation of their own divine potential as sons of God. Only by this form of devotion shall their hearts, touched by the hands of the infinite Creator, be imbued with such reality and love that they will move with precision to execute the divine will. Thus shall men behold the outworkings of a providence that has so long yearned to find greater expression in mortal affairs, that those affairs might become truly guided by the power of life from on high. Then shall liberty live in human beings. Then shall liberty live in human lives. Then shall freedom in honor raise men to a state where they can invoke by the creative power of the Spirit a golden age that will transcend the age of Pericles and every other golden age that the earth has ever known. This shall come about through the establishment of a fountain of living flame power, wisdom, and love. The establishment of a foundation of cosmic light over the city of Los Angeles was announced by the great silent watcher at the class of the angels on September 21st, 1963, for a period of 100 years or as long as the great law will permit. This tripartite etheric fountain extends 30 miles in diameter. The outer ring is composed of a blue fountain of cosmic faith, rising 1 mile high above the city. The next ring, 1 mile within the blue, is a golden fountain of cosmic illumination, 28 miles wide and 1 mile and a half high. And in the center, there is a pink fountain of cosmic love, 26 miles across and 2 miles high. After the announcement, Mighty Victory said, "We are laying the foundation stone here tonight for mankind's cosmic victory." Such a foundation of cosmic light may be established by the hierarchy with the assistance of the angel divas and builders of form wherever students faithfully invoke and visualize the fountain described. That fountain shall inundate the souls of men and drench their garments with so much of the essence of freedom that they will perceive spiritual alchemy as the means to every cosmic end, and the glory of the threefold flame, now saturating their consciousness with a fiery brilliance, will evoke an equal response in the very heart of God. The bond thus established between earth and heaven shall raise this star to a position of greater brilliance than the star of the east that heralded the approach of the Master Jesus 2,000 years ago. For this light will signify the victory of the Christ consciousness, not only in one Son of God, but also in all mankind. I am the exponent of freedom for this age, and in revealing these facts about the science of alchemy, I cannot restrain myself from voicing these sentiments as apropos of the struggles of the times. Are men filled with idealism? Let them turn that idealism toward the light, where divine ideas flow out from a central fountain of living flame. There let all kindle and rekindle the torches of being, and let the fires of their minds be saturated with new hope for a new age born of the Spirit. Life was never meant to be a cesspool of defeat, but a pillar of victory whose crowning laurel speaks of a living abundance. Blooming within the soul, that abundance extends itself out of the lonely room of self into the larger domain of the universe. The Ascended Master's consciousness is a vital power which will assist the devotee in performing a more than ordinary activity of genuine service and renewal. For we are about the Father's business of renewing the consciousness of men, not by applying old patches over old patches, but by renovating the entire garment of consciousness. As we prepare, then, to make the would-be spiritual alchemist more effective in performing the Father's will, and in enhancing the value of freedom, let us say unto every man, the Lord is your shepherd, you shall not want. Psalms 23:1. If you would only understand that he longs to guide you correctly, if you will only understand that whereas evil has no real existence, its shadowed veil has been the means through the centuries of binding men to the earth, and you shall see that by cutting the bonds of evil and by acknowledging the power of God, you will no longer strain at a gnat and swallow a camel. Matthew 23:24. But you will enter straightway into the city of God, into the consciousness that transcends the world and its options by recognizing the spiritual options that lie as a gift in your hand. Man is the divine alchemist in physical form. In his right hand, the gift of life lies beating. It is the pulsation of cosmic effort. Without acknowledging the gift, man fades away as a vapor upon the glass. By acknowledging it, the cosmic breath strengthens the manifestation of self until death is swallowed up in victory. 1 Corinthians 15:54. And life stands forth transcendent and splendid to every eye. Onward we move progressively toward freedom in action. I am Saint Germain. Chapter 4. On to penetrate matter. All right. Chapter 4, to penetrate matter. Ere we begin to school the alchemist in more advanced methods of producing the seeming miracles of love manifest right before his eye, we are duty-bound to make further exhortations calculated to prevent the spread of danger through the misuse of higher powers. What do you think the story of Garden of Eden reveals to man if it does not reveal his disobedience to the divine mandates and his misuse of sacred power? We will consider then the solidity of substance. Matter that presents so hard an appearance to the eye is actually composed of the whirling energies of spirit. When the higher mind examines the nature of spirit and makes known its findings to the mind of man, he becomes imbued with what we shall call his first awareness of the potential of the self to penetrate matter. Matter is no longer solid, but yields to the probing fingers of his mind and spirit. Its density can be calculated and comprehended by the self, and with the speed of light, the consciousness can reach out and pass through dense substance as easily as the swimmer cuts through the water with his arms in motion. The more the individual becomes aware of the inner power of the self to sense the various shades of reality, the more his powers magnify. At this juncture, the astute and godly man is aware of the need to guard the way of the tree of life. Genesis 2:9, 3:24, Revelations 2:7, 22:2. Gazing around him upon the world scene, he sees a mixture of good and evil, and he knows within himself that in reality you can never bend the two. For whereas black and white may be mixed, their combination will always bring forth a gray tone. In dealing with the human self, man has been convinced over the years that this blending of black and white is the true nature of men. It is almost as though mankind were stigmatized and hypnotized by the concept that the die of sin, like a die that is cast, is itself immutable. It is to the shattering of this erroneous concept that I dedicate this rendering. Whereas the scriptures of the world are filled with admonishments against sin, and certainly the jangle and discord of the world bears witness to the diabolical inferno that can ignite in the consciousness of men, yet grace and mercy also appear, and beauty together with the myriad and magnificent qualities of nature. How then shall we distinguish between the darkness and the light, as these take shape in mortal consciousness and combine in manifestation? There are those who argue that the brilliance of the absolute would lack definition without the tonal values that dilute the pure light into various shades of gray and even black. They say that the darkness is needed as a medium of contrast in which the light can appear. Let me hasten to say that these individuals do not yet have the knowledge that the cosmic law would vouchsafe to them. Therefore, let them hold their peace until they know whereof they speak. For they are not considered the introduction of the color spectrum. For they have not considered the introduction of the color spectrum and the emergence of the beautiful pastel hues radiantly functioning in the spiritual world without ever requiring a single shade of gray or black to delineate the many facets of the consciousness of God. Black is the absence of light and of the color qualities of life, whereas white contains all the rainbow rays, as the prism clearly shows. Let me say then that within the realm of the absolute, within the goodness of God, within his power to create, lies a chromatic scheme so dazzling and so splendid as to literally propel the consciousness of man out of the socket of moral vicissitudes. Why then do men and women tarry in the Troys of the denizens of darkness? I say it is through a common ignorance and the unfortunate spread of suspicion and doubt. This distrust of the invisible yet all powerful spiritual world by men and women is a strange phenomenon, for they are so easily persuaded to give their all to the cause of faithlessness. Contending that God is not, and expounding and expanding upon their doubts, they never seem to realize that the energies that they use, if properly directed toward a higher faith, would produce the miracles of alchemy. And these tangible manifestations of the divine power would utterly convince them as to the rightness of the divine plan and ideal. It has always been inconceivable to the many sincere and religious people that any man would succumb as Faustin to Mephistopheles, Mephistopheles, and sell his soul to the forces of nihilism. But this is not so hard to understand if men will recognize that it is possible for faith and doubt to live side by side in the consciousness of the individual. The presence of two opposing forces creates vacillation. Therefore, in moments of faith, individuals are able to believe in the miraculous powers of nature and of alchemy. And when they allow projections of doubt concerning their own reality to be anchored within their consciousness, they are able to rationalize their selfish conduct. Through habit, men use the energies of God to draw forth the elements of the good life which they desire. At the same time, they take pleasure in preventing the manifestation of good in the lives of the innocent and those who may be far more virtuous than themselves. Hence, we warn of the degradations of witchcraft and black magic. Remember that the goal of spiritual alchemy is to create nobility in the soul and virtue everywhere, particularly in the realm of the self. For how can men extend to the boundaries of others' lives that which they cannot manifest in their own? Here lies the great error of the impatient black magician or the advocate of witchcraft. He is not willing to wait for the externalization of his own spiritual dedication and the release of the divine afflatus into the capsule of identity before exerting his energies on behalf of controlling the universe. Now, this chapter is the last that I shall write in this vein. In succeeding ones, it is my intent to release some very interesting keys to the students of the light. But cosmic law demands that I explain that the light must always be used to produce the fervent beauty of dedication to God, love for humanity, and those divine qualities that enable the soul to adhere to the tenets of the Great White Brotherhood. When this is accomplished, we are certain that he will have not just a few students in our class on the science of alchemy, or the science of wondrous change, as our students have come to call it, but we will have many. And these many will also be forewarned and forearmed against the misuse of power, so that all of their earnest efforts will cooperate successfully in achieving the divine plan for the golden age oncoming. Only the few are aware of the enormous effort being made in the higher reaches of cosmos to assist humanity in awakening for the lethargy of their long sleep in the realm of the human ego, that fantastic and complex force field of individuality out of which a god can be born, and out of which can emerge monstrous forms of discord and confusion, to the domain of the real self that is locked within it, awaiting to be released, the greatest secrets of all time. Today is the Lord's day. Today is the day of the God self. The ages have not marred the power of him who has said, I am the same yesterday and today and forever. Wait. No. Hebrews 13:8. Therefore be assured of a kindly response to those efforts which are made in hope, in faith, and in charity for the greatest masters function in this domain. To be a mortal adept, to move mountains for the sake of greed and the aggrandizement of the human person is as nothing. For he who has said, Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you, Matthew 6:33, meant every word of it. Right now, today, you stand upon the threshold of fulfillment in your eyes as you realize the beauty of nobility so ably stated by Sir Galahad of old. My strength is as the strength of 10 because my heart is pure. Alfred Lord Tennyson. Sir Galahad, stanza 1. Let us ready ourselves now for that purity which precedes the greatest alchemical manifestation. For your advancement and achievement, I remain Saint Germain. Chapter 5, Formulas for Precipitation. I'm going to have a little drink and say thank you for joining in today. I hope you are enjoying this. If you haven't listened to the other pieces that I have been reading each week, these are powerful information. The first pillar of the teachings of the Ascended Masters is the Aura by Katumi, and then this book has the second and third pillar, and then the Aura, Advanced Studies of the Aura, is the fourth, and those are the four pillars of the teachings of the Ascended Masters. So we're actually on to the third pillar right now, and if you've missed the others, then definitely feel free to go back and enjoy catching yourself up. There's a lot of great information, and then I do my little side trails, and then we get back to it as we are now. So chapter 5, Formulas for Precipitation. Not what might be, but what will be, because man envisions, invokes, and decrees alchemy, the wondrous science of change that orders man's affairs and renews the sweet purity of communion with the great progenitor. The concept of the multiplication of cells points to the law of nature that provides for a continual addendum. This law, which governs the reproduction of life after its kind, does not involve the physical body alone, but the mind, the feelings, and the memory, as well as the pure spirit of man. Coordination between the four lower bodies and the higher vehicles enables man first to control his environment and then to create, on condition that he can understand and not be hindered by the obvious illusions of the appearance world, whose point of reference is time and space. Now, the presence or absence of certain factors may either lengthen or shorten the time of precipitation, even though all other components be in order. Therefore, when these factors are known, they can be systematically eliminated in order to shorten the time of manifestation. The primary deterrents to precipitation should be recognized as one, in harmony in the feeling world, two, a sense of loneliness or abandonment, and three, a sense of smallness or insecurity and doubt. Sometimes the presence of these factors can be by a simple act of faith. At other times, it may require more earnest application to the deity and a strengthening of the positive counteractions, which are designed to eliminate completely the negative influences manifesting within and without one's world. It may seem strange to some of you that I call to your attention these simple facts, but I may honestly say they are not so simple, for the effects of these mood energies upon the creative intent are of far greater consequence than humanity are willing to admit. By pointing out the need to correct these conditions, the would-be alchemist aware of the influence they exert upon his desired manifestation, I feel that we are taking a big step in the right direction. For this knowledge applied will avoid the introduction of discouraging factors at a later time, when for some the anticipated results will not be immediately forthcoming for the very reasons I have stated. This brings me to the place where I want to amplify at the beginning of my instruction the need for perseverance. Frequently, failure to persevere in the correct course has nullified all fruitage just before the harvest from the invisible world was ready to release itself into the hands and use of the seeker. We would mention now some of the great and vital alchemical factors whose positive power should also be considered. Chief among this list is faith. This includes a belief in the whirling power that keeps the electrons in vital motion, revolving around their nucleonic centers. This power resembles a tightly compressed, almost omnipotent spring. It is central to every solar system and atom whose magnetic flux and emanation, while centered in its own nucleus, is able under cosmic law to tie into limitless energy fields to produce whatsoever miraculous manifestation is the requirement of the moment, when the individual is able to convince himself and the universe that his course is right. Now, we have all seen men who were remarkably successful in producing wrong action simply because they were convinced that their course was right, even though they were actually wrong. This does not mean the cosmos itself is proverbially blind. This does not mean that cosmos itself is proverbially blind. It is simply indicative of the cosmic need to protect the secrets of creation from the eyes of the curious and to guard the treasure of heaven through the systems of initiation evolved by the Brotherhood. For this very reason, the fiat of God went forth. Behold, the man is become as one of us, to know evil and good, to know good and evil. And now, lest he put forth his hand and take also of the tree of life and eat and live forever, therefore the Lord God sent him forth from the garden of Eden to till the ground from whence he was taken. Genesis 3:22 and 23. The inner necessity of the universe to protect its secrets from the profane can be seen in the activities of the Luciferian hordes who, from time to time during the long history of the planet, have involved the sons of God in a misuse of the creative and sacred power of life. This they have done through psychedelic perversions, dangerous drugs, their infectious spirit of rebellion against order, which is heaven's first law, and the spread of chaos, often in the name of idealism. But this brand of idealism has always been based on intellectual pride, and it is put forth as the counterpart of the carnal mind that competence with the divine mind that competes with the divine mind, considering itself superior thereto. Therefore, if I have seemed overly protective in this intermediate course on alchemy, heaven knows there is a reason for it. And now I say to each one, taking into account the semantics of alchemy, let us recognize that the word altar signifies a sacred place of change. Here, all change is wrought by God's law. God is law. His law does not exist without love, but unfortunately, owing to the very generosity inherent within the divine nature, which allows various functions of the law to be used by evolving humanity, it has been possible for man to separate the law from love. Thus, the more mechanical aspects of alchemy, called magic, have been employed down through the centuries by those who have used their knowledge of God's laws for selfish ends. This was demonstrated at the court of Pharaoh, when Aaron, a true alchemist of the spirit, was challenged by the magicians who cast down their rods that also became serpents. Exodus 7:8-12. The mechanical aspects of the law are often combined with trickery to produce phenomena which, in the eyes of God, are meaningless. Once a man has attained the position of a true spiritual adept, he has developed the powers of love and wisdom within the framework of universal law. He is innocent of harm to any, and his alchemical feats reflect his selflessness. Then the miracles he produces are of far less importance in his own eyes than the miracle of his oneness with his Creator. So now, as we face the altar, the place consecrated to the science of wondrous change, we must recognize the two courses before us. The first is to choose a course of action on the highest knowledge made known to us. We decide what we wish to change. We decide why it needs to be changed. This gives motive power to our alchemical experiment. At the same time, we recognize the limitations of man's knowledge and the superiority of the God self and of the elder brothers of light to assist him in working out his individual destiny. Therefore, the second course of action is to be aware that right change can be produced without conscious knowledge of what that change ought to be. We simply invoke from God the purity of his divine plan for right change. In other words, we command in the name of the Lord, which man as a co-creator with God has the right to do, an alchemical precipitation of the gifts and graces of the Spirit that will endow the blessed Son with the qualities of the Christ, thereby making him more capable as an alchemical alchemist, as a spiritual alchemist, and more integrated with the universal plan. I have found that wherever the second alchemical technique is employed, it strengthens the first course of action, invoked action, and fills the gaps in man's fort of knowledge, covering his ignorance by the cloak of true spirituality. As we face the altar, aware of the realities of God and of the potential for the realization in man, let us also take into account those masterful beings who have already secured for themselves the ability to produce change at will. Surely the acceptance of those who have been successful in the alchemical arts will be invaluable in producing the fruit of our desires. Invocations and prayers of one's choices are then in perfect order. With an awareness of the law, faith in its interpersonal operation, and a determined intent that once the formula has been developed, the desired manifestation must be released into form, we shall proceed with the business of creating change. Now, one of the most effective means by which change can be produced, and this which I here make known to you is a deep and wondrous secret held by many of the Eastern and Western adepts, is through what I call the creation of the cloud. St. Paul referred to a cloud of witnesses. Hebrews 12:1. I am referring to a cloud of infinite energy, which, somewhat like the ether, so popularized by the scientists of a century ago, is everywhere present but nowhere manifest until it is called into action. At first reading, to those who are empirically minded, skilled only in the material aspects of science and in what the senses can perceive, my foregoing remarks may seem to be just so foolish, may seem to be just so much foolishness. If any think that, I can only have compassion for them. I cannot help them, nor does the law require me to apologize, for I have proved this principle many times with the greatest of success. And I think that where the great adepts do not consciously use them, then it is an automated then it is au- then it is automated for them through their contact with the higher mind. But for most of our beginning and intermediate students, it will be essential that they learn the process carefully in order that they can first consciously create the cloud and then wait until its appearance becomes an automated process in their beings. I shall continue next week with this very important activity, create, and the cloud. Onward. Saint Germain. I shall continue next week with this very important activity, create, and the cloud. Onward, Saint Germain. Well, we have another 15 minutes before the top of the hour. And so that will take us through the chapter on create and the cloud. So let us go. Chapter 6. And that is going to die my phone. So I wonder if I can do it one-handed. Oh, we're not even live. There we go. Okay. So, Chapter 6, Create and the Cloud. How deeply many have yearned to know how to produce constructive change, both in themselves and in the world. Let them realize, then, that to bring about change is a creative act. Alchemy is the creative science whereby man is enabled to obey the original fiat of God, take dominion over the earth. This command was indicative of the Father's plan for his Son, and the means to implement it are discovered as one learns the ancient secrets of this sacred science. Practicing the principles of alchemy, the individual is able to rise from being a puppet to the will of other egos, to the will of disobedient spirits, to the passing fancies of the times, or to the dictates of the brothers of the shadow who induce the young adept to practice black magic and witchcraft, flattering his ego and often quoting scriptures, saying, "If thou be the Son of God, command that these stones be made bread." Matthew 4:3. Now we are on the verge of taking our initial steps in producing change, not a change that gears man to the contemporary scene where his every effort is molded by environmental factors, but a change that will bring him closer to his real image. We will create the means whereby change can be produced by our sovereign will, whereby we can take dominion over the earth, for it is here on earth that we are obliged. Merriam-Webster's Collegiate Dictionary, 11th edition defines noblesse oblige, literally nobility obligates, as the obligation of honorable, generous, and responsible behavior associated with high rank or birth. That is, the sons of God, because of their high birth and heritage, are obliged to invoke the will of God and to practice the science of alchemy selflessly on behalf of all humanity. For it is here on earth that we are obliged to create the desires of our hearts. It is right here and now that we are indeed obligated to become co-creators with God, thus to fulfill the purity of his intent. Whereas I recognize that there may seem to be mechanistic force factors in the scientific direction that I am about to give you. I am sure you have noticed the many safeguards which I have inserted into this course to make certain that you are never, for none should ever assume that by a mere mechanical ritual he will be able to perform the manifestation. Not so. For the highest alchemy, the greatest change, is that which changes man into God, wherein the Son becomes one with the Father, and this can never be accomplished by mechanical means. See the great divine director, the mechanization concept in Pearls of Wisdom, Volume 8, 1965, page 9 to 142, also available in paperback, the soulless one. The divine director, the great divine director. In order to understand, I'll just read that for you. Darn it. Great divine director. The ascended master, whose attainment of cosmic consciousness qualifies him to ensoul the flame of divine direction on behalf of Earth's evolutions and untold life ways beyond. Founder of the House of Rakowski, teacher of Saint Germain, sponsor and Manu of the incoming seventh root race, this cosmic being maintains a focus in the cave of light in India and in his retreat in Transylvania, the focus of freedom. The great divine director represents the first ray on the karmic board. He is also known as the Master R. Stand now before your altar, honoring the living God and his fiat. For he who is God has commanded it. Take dominion. You are rightfully functioning. Then, as you do just that, you are about to create, and you will first create the cloud from the enormous power of God stored at every point in space, waiting to be invoked. The power of vision is central to our invocation. Therefore, we shall create in our minds first a milky white radiance, and we shall see this milky white radiance as an electronic vibratory action of vital, moving, ineffable light. The concentration of the light, which we call the density of the light, is that which makes the milky white color. If the cloud were attenuated, we would be able to see through it as though the scenes around us were enveloped in a fog. Now, having created in our minds this form of a bright translucent cloud, we allow it to enfold our physical bodies and to occupy our force field. For a moment, we become lost in the midst of the cloud, and then it seems as though it has always been there. Its atmosphere is familiar and comfortable. We recognize that the mind has the power to expand us, and we must not try to move from the parent tree of self. Let this bright and shining cloud at first be 9 feet in diameter around oneself. Later, perhaps, we shall expand it to a diameter of 90 feet, then 900 feet and further. In our early meditations, we shall concentrate on intensifying the action of the white light in our minds. From thence, we shall transfer that action to the 9-foot area around the physical form. Once we have developed the sense of the cloud being around our physical forms, we shall understand that whereas the cloud can be made visible to the physical sight, our primary concern is to keep its high vibratory action purely spiritual. Those of you who are familiar with electronics and the workings of a rheostat will understand that by a simple twist of the dial of consciousness, we can intensify the vibratory action of the cloud. In this case, we coalesce more light around each central point of light, for our cloud is composed of many light points whose auras diffuse and blend with one another, making the total effect one of a lacy yet highly concentrated white radiance, a pure swirling cloud of cosmic energy. What is this mighty cloud that we have created, this force field of vibrating energy, and why did we create it in the first place? Actually, whereas I have used the word create, it would be more appropriate if perhaps I used the word magnetize, for we are actually magnetizing that which is already everywhere present in space. We are amplifying an intense action of the light from within its own force field, more than would normally manifest in a given area. We are thereby drawing upon universal God power to produce this cloud that first penetrates and then hollows our immediate force field, in order that we may have a spiritual altar upon which we may project the pictures of reality that we desire to create. Bear in mind that this cloud can be used therapeutically for the healing of the nations and the soul of a planet, or you can use it as a platform to invoke, as Christ upon the Mount of Transfiguration, the presence of the ascended masters, of beloved Jesus, Mother Mary, the Master Serapis Bey from Luxor, the Maha Chohan, Lord Maitreya, Archangel Michael, to assist you not only in your alchemical experiments, but also in your ministrations to life. Where are you yet ignorant of just what you ought to produce for yourself and others? You can, in a gentle, childlike manner, ask God to produce out of the great pool of His light energy the miracle of His healing love, not only in your life, but in the lives of your loved ones, but also in the lives of the multitudes of the world at large. You can ask the power of God and of the kingdom of heaven to come into manifestation upon earth. You can ask for the golden age to be born, for an end to strife and struggle and all negative and hateful manifestations. You can ask for love to take dominion over the world. If you will open your heart to the needs of the world and to the love of the Divine Mother that seeks expression through your uplifted consciousness, limitless ideas for universal service will flow into your mind. But here again, let me hasten to sound a note of warning, especially for the benefit of those who have been psychically inclined, or who have a tendency, as humanity would say, to go off the deep end. Beware. You are dealing with sacred creative power. Beware. It is better for you to ask the masters to interject their ideas for you without necessarily defining or releasing them to your conscious mind, than for you to be carried away from the tether of the alchemical norm. The ascended masters are not only sane and well organized, but they are also godly and profound to the nth degree. It is essential, then, that you become likewise. Above all, be not carried away by pride or the exaltation of the self over others. As you gain spiritual power through these periods of meditation upon the cloud, which at first should not exceed 15 minutes a day, try to understand that the creative cloud, once it is dispersed by your fiat at the conclusion of your creative ceremony, will continue to expand and expand and expand throughout the universe as a globe of translucent white fire, eddying in ever widening spheres to contact all that is real and that is really yours. The cloud, as the manifestation of the power of your creative energy, the fire of your spirit, will draw into your world the very consciousness of God Himself. Evoked from the central pores of being and beautifully expanding as an altar of God, the cloud will hollow space wherever it expands. Christ was able to produce the miracles recorded in the Gospels and many more because He had first mastered the correct use of energy. He called the holy energy of Spirit Father, and of a truth the Father the Spirit is to all manifestation. The Father is all loving, all knowing, and all powerful, and He will make you all that He is. But we have only begun to touch upon the correct use of His energy. Therefore, I seek to develop in your consciousness, through your reading of this material, a proper attitude that will enable you to function under the guidance of your own God presence and Christ self, as an efficient co-creator with God and the Brotherhood of Light. We need alchemists of the spirit, men and women who will produce physical, mental, emotional, and etheric alchemical manifestations, wielding them all into one creative act of abundant living. These shall at last understand the meaning of the Master's words, I am come that they might have life and that they might have it more abundantly. John 10:10. I am come that they might have life and that they might have it more abundantly. Woo! Yes, that's why we are here, my friends. Alchemy is not a devilish means of bringing forth riches and honor. It is a spiritual, all-loving science of changing the base metals that make up the synthetic image of man into the pure gold of the real image that he may implant that he may implement his wise dominion over the earth. Eventually, the great alchemist will teach the apprentice the seraphic science whereby man shall produce that wondrous final change of which Paul spoke. Behold, I show you a mystery. We shall not all sleep, but we shall all be changed in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trump. For the trumpet shall sound, and the dead shall be risen, and the dead shall be raised incorruptible, and we shall be changed. 1 Corinthians 15:51-52. Bear in mind that I have only lightly touched upon this great creative energy that is within you even now. In the name of the Master of Masters, in the name of the Lord Christ, I remain his servant and your advocate forever, Saint Germain. And so that brings us to chapter 7, the science of picturization. And so we're going to carry on next week reading what alchemy can mean to a decaying world, which is interesting for the times we find ourselves in. We'll also talk about anxiety and the anxiety syndrome as well. So anyone who is feeling like that would be beneficial. We may also get to nature yields to the childlike mind, the childlike mind being the mind of spirit, God within us, that then will take us to the highest alchemy. So those would be the next 4 chapters, of which we will wrap up our reading tonight. And I will also, as promised, do a little card pull just to say for you who is watching. This is by Cheryl Lee Harnish, and it is the Divine Guidance deck. And so I will simply shuffle a card and say this is a message that is meant to come. That's interesting. I think that was number 10. Woo, here we go. 13. Ooh, it's a gateway card. That's exciting. I'll read that in a moment. I'll just see if any others pop out. I hope you guys have been having a great week. I hope that the circumstances of our present chaos is not penetrating your cells, because in truth, we cannot afford to be corrupted any further than what we have already allowed ourselves to be in this crazy world that we live in. I feel like 43 is the one that gets read first. It is Earth Angel. So, you truly are an Earth Angel. And hello, Heather. Heatherin? Heathen. Heathen breathing fire. Hey, awesome to see you. You are truly an Earth Angel. It is time to recognize and honor the beautiful spirit that you are. Once we are incarnated, we forget who and what we truly are. Now is your time to remember. Claim your wings, knowing you really do make a difference in the lives that you touch. You have many loving angelic beings with you to support you on your divine path. Feel safe in allowing yourself to follow the path that you are guided to walk. Whatever that path may be, you are ready to spread your wings and fly. So fly away. Not just yet. I'll read the first one that came out. This one flipped over in the deck, and it's actually opening. Your intuition and psychic connection is open and flowing, allowing you to access higher realms of knowledge and understanding. Sometimes when we receive guidance or information from these realms, it can be a bit confusing or unclear. There is a lot of information moving through your subconscious that your conscious mind has to process. It does get easier in time. The more you use it, the stronger it becomes. Just remember, this open connection is how you are naturally meant to operate. You are now in direct communication with other realities and your higher self. Woohoo! Congratulations, all of us, because we are all in this together, which is why it's relevant for us to have chosen a new direction together. Energetically, your life is ready to move in a new direction, but you have to allow for this to happen. Have you noticed that you do the same things each day, that you've fallen into a routine? It's time to break free from the daily patterns you have created in your life. It's time to be spontaneous. When you do this, you open your energy to the possibilities of something new and revive your passion for living. The energy of the universe is ready to flow. And by consciously breaking free of the routines and patterns you have created in your life, you allow space for the new and different to manifest. Fascinating, considering tonight was the 12th Lawfully Organized Summit and the last. I will say, at the foundation of the deck is a card that we could all benefit from having a little more of, and that is gratitude. Gratitude is a very powerful energy, which can both open the heart and mind to all the wondrous blessings we are given. Take time each and every day to offer your deepest heartfelt gratitude for all that you have and are given. Make a conscious effort to look for all the good that is flowing into your life. Send your love to all those you cherish and love. Your acknowledgement of the divine flow that supports and provides for you opens your energy in a powerful way. You will become your own bright light, even in the darkest of times. Amen. So, if you did not hear the message earlier, I will be hosting a call with Michael Seegers and anyone else who is able to join, which is part 2 of Jesus. This time, Jesus and the Ascension process. So that'll be tomorrow night at time if you're interested in coming out. Last Friday, actually had a conversation about Jesus's story, and so would love to be able to have you in. The comment is so funny to see be spontaneous after hearing from everywhere, get into a pattern, build up routines until this year. Well, we have to understand that we are also living in a grid of a 3D matrix that has 2 timelines, which is the 3D and the 5D. And essentially, the 3D is very much the physical, carnal, egoic aspect of ourselves, and the 5D is our higher divine nature, like Jesus, who was able to become an ascended one because he was able to embody virtue and walk the path and be the way, and ultimately was an example, not him alone, but he was an example of what we've all come here to do. And then religion has really made it so he becomes the figure you worship instead of realizing he said, all of this you too can do and more. So with the structures and really getting into patterns and routines, we have to understand as well from a creative perspective. I've been accessing the Akashic records and do readings if that's something that might be of interest. I've been doing that since 2013, and there's creative blueprint readings, which have 7 different polarity spectrums, and variability and constancy or consistency are 2 of the it's the same, it's both sides of the same coin. So there are some people that need to just do the same thing over and over again, and they are super content to do that. And then there's the variable ones like me, for instance, that I need to do different things in order to have the same creative experience as somebody that needs to do something more consistently does. So really understanding our own blueprint and who we are at a soul level really helps. But having patterns, sometimes we can create those, but how can we even create a pattern that will serve us by actually being variable while still consistent? So even just changing up when you do things within the day, if you have a special practice, which the Peaceful Inner Warriors United special practice is something that I'm going to be sharing, and really I'm going to be leading a pilot program. If you're interested, then please do reach out, and I would love to be able to take you on that journey into who you truly are, and creating a special practice that will give you that routine, but you create it. So that means you can choose what time you're going to do things. And even just the time of it, even though you're doing the same thing, if you do it at a different time, there's the element of variability then that can honor somebody that needs that variability. Or if you really need the consistency, then that plan will be the one that you can choose to do at the same time each day. So all of that is to say that I just cut the card, and 22 is the one that I'm going to leave today's message with. I do love reading cards, so if that's something that you want to get into more. I mentioned the grid, and that's actually the card. So this is the grid, the matrix of Mother Earth and the secret pathways to other dimensions and realities of existence. The power of the sacred geometry within holds many keys that your subconscious is unlocking. This card shows your ability to explore and maneuver through other worlds and to bring information back from them. You may do this in the dream time, during meditation, or even unknowingly while completing conscious and, or during, while completely conscious and alert. Hidden within this card are messages that only you can retrieve. Sit with this one for a while. So if you want to just hold the screen after we turn off and come back to it so you can view it more. These cards are beautiful. They are by Cheryl Lee Harnish, and I absolutely love these cards. So connection keeps lagging out. Not sure if it's your internet or not. Thank you very much. That's nice. And you're very welcome for the reading. It's my absolute pleasure. And I wish you a wonderful rest of your week and look forward to coming together again next week. I'm just turning off over on YouTube. And then we'll do the same over on Facebook and YouTube too. So peace out, my friends. We'll see you next Thursday. And if you can join in tomorrow for the Summit about Jesus, you can sign up at ljeh.ca. That is my website, and that is where you will be able to get the emails with the link to be able to join. Speaking of dimensions, do you feel the prevalent mythos of different belief structures are at least partially premised on interdimensional travelers? I'm not sure whether I can answer that without better understanding what specifically you're asking, but in a related, and I'm not sure whether this is going to be answering your question way, I would say that we are all interdimensional travelers. We are multidimensional beings, God sparks incarnate, that are here to experience and express ourselves, star seeds who have all come from different areas of the universe, the one song, that ultimately are here to be part of this tipping point time in humanity's history. And ultimately, I believe that we're interdimensional travelers. So I don't know whether that answers your question, but certainly we bring in with us the cellular memory of all that came before us, including all those who came before us. So the Christos consciousness is actually, from what I am still really working to better understand and be able to articulate in a way that it benefits without misleading, I believe that Jesus came before us in order to plant the seeds within us of the Christos DNA that is now being either reawakened within those of us who are willing to have eyes to step into becoming the ascended master that we came here to be, or it's being corrupted by the gene therapy that is currently being injected in people who are buying the mainstream narrative that say it's good and it's going to increase their odds, and all of the other BS belief systems that I also believe is absolute BS. So that's my personal perspective on that one. But meaning pantheons of gods or other deified figures are from elsewhere. Do I believe that the prevalent mythos of different belief structures are at least partly premised? Good point about all of us being interdimensional travelers. Yes, my aunt is one of those who is convinced of the BS. Yes, well, it's divisive, and it definitely doesn't make friends for the ones that don't want to consider the possibility that we've all been lied to and that government is mind control. Literally, if you actually look, govern, control, and ment is mental body. So it's literally a mind control mechanism that's a corporation that we contract with. And so I've learned more about that through the summits that we were hosting on Thursdays at 4. But there's so much more to learn, because essentially it's a matter of unlearning all of the BS that we've taken on to believe in. And then ultimately, when you actually look behind the the curtains, then you find it's a little man that was projecting himself to be magnified onto a screen that seemed very menacing, and is very menacing when that big, scary character is directing and calling the shots, because we've given them the power. But what we have to do now is take that power back and understand where we're placing our power so that we can do that. And in the process, we call back our soul fragments from all of those not now moments to bring us firmly back where we are. I said, no, I'll pass. She tried convincing me of the genetic Yeah. Well, I have a lot to say about that, but we won't get into that tonight specifically. But yeah, it's pretty crazy times. Dr. Sherry Tenpenny did a phenomenal video about the Trojan horse mechanism that she says is in injection, which is not actually a V that we're not allowed to say, because they have solutions. And this one doesn't actually solution it, because the virus hasn't been isolated. So when we think about what we're getting inoculated for, if it hasn't been isolated, then what are we getting inoculated for, and how does it increase our odds? And if we actually look at the fact, the only reason it has been supported or able to be promoted is because the rules for what it means to be in a pandemic have changed before the pandemic started, in order to make it so that emergency medical act or the emergency protocols make it so that they're able to endorse it. But without that, this wouldn't have been possible. So I know this is controversial, and it may not it may not be favorable, but that is my perspective based on my tremendous amount of research, and then also my own experience of having got locked up in a mental institution for 2.5 weeks when I kind of came online to the fact the system's corrupt back in September 27th, 2019, and discovered for myself firsthand how corrupt the system really is, and that what I thought was there to help is the modern day witch hunt, so far as I see it, which I know that's pretty crazy, but crazy is different, and insanity is doing the same thing over again, expecting different results, which I don't believe that we can afford to do. Further to that, I would also say that black magic only works if they tell us what they're doing to us, so then they can say that we deserved everything we got because they warned us, but they did it with a smile, and we thought they were joking, so we didn't take it seriously. So there's that whole element to it too. And if you read the Rockefeller report from 2010 or Agenda 21 or Agenda 2030, they're connected to the Sustainability Act, which is to sustain the Earth's resources for the few at the expense of the many. Do you think I am not sure about the Nephilim type DNA, but any kind of corruption would be moving us away from our Christos consciousness and DNA. So that would be nefarious in altering who we are on a cellular level and who we believe ourselves to be. And also it then brings into the element, or it brings us to the point of patentability of humans. When you actually look at GMO seeds, for instance, being, there aren't original seeds left, because now, even if there is an original or organic field and a seed of a patented GMO seed goes into their field, that farmer can be sued for stealing. And then, so if we look at the corruption of corporatocratic government, which is essentially, we're, from my perspective, dealing with a corporatocratic takeover. If you look at what they've done with seeds, now, if this is truly gene therapy, the way that all of the research that I've come across outside of the mainstream narrative that has a particular agenda, which we always must be mindful of, whose agenda is it and what's the agenda and why, then you can actually get to the point where if this injection is going to make it so that the body, as Gates said himself, will become a vaccine factory, at what point does the replicated synthetic component of what is going to then be produced in the body to make it a vaccine factory, then going to actually make it so that the one who is that is patented by the patent holder? And if you look at March 2020, Gates Foundation put through a patent of 060606, the mark of the beast. Very nefarious. Just trying to catch up with all the comments here. We are getting inoculated so that nanites can stay there for life and be activated via 5G wands at will by the powers that be to genetically modify us, including removing the empathy chromosome. Yeah, I did hear that it was to target the 8th chromosome of empathy. And ultimately, all of the programming, if we look at it from the perspective of the video games and the music, of music, and also movies, all of that has absolutely been about making it so that we don't feel compassion for people in the same way, and all of the unreasonable expectations and standards about arriving perfect and all of that BS that doesn't really truly exist. All of these unreasonable expectations just set everybody up to just give the power away to the expert that seems to have the authority because they're in front of you in that moment. But even myself, it's just like, I'm not an expert in everything. It's just like there are some things that I have a lot more understanding of than other things. So depending on what I'm speaking of, you know, where it comes to self-image and transforming that because of my own process, I can speak into that with more authority than I could about something that I am not well versed in. So I'm not a scientist and I don't have a scientific background. So where all of this is concerned, it is taking the words of experts, but ultimately you can't beware until you're aware. So where do you draw the line? Where do you figure it out, you know? Higher learning, divine wisdom. Yeah, I went through that in 2007. I'm sorry. It's traumatizing. There are so many people that have went through the mental health system though. And it's just simply, if you don't agree, it was hell. You have my respect and empathy for what you must have went through there. Thank you. Yes, reset the table. F the Rockefellers. All they did was combine all the crap that hadn't flown thusly, like the Green New Deal and gun seizure under the false flag banner of this sniffles pandemic under COVAX. Yeah. Or you can call it a pandemic in truth, because this is treason that's being committed. And treason is committed with a pen behind closed doors, just like the Trojan horse mechanism inside of the injection, because ultimately, you let it in and you think it's safe, and you're told it's safe by the ones that you think are the experts because they're the scientists and the professionals. But even the medical industry itself was founded by the Rockefeller Foundation back in like 1900s. So Obama passed that. He appointed Michael Taylor, former CEO of Monsanto, head of FDA. Yep. They also killed Brandy Vaughn, or however you spell her name, late December last year for refusing to be intimidated or back down on the dangers of all the injections. Former head saleswoman for Merck, who quit and spoke out after she learned what her product had done. Yes. I think they are coupling this with contact tracing and Elon Musk's satellites. Yeah. Well, they've already introduced the idea of the cloud and getting us hooked up with Apple because that's how they introduce it. It's just like even with this, if this was the plan, and if you look at how long it's been in the works, like even the Rockefeller Report 2010, like that for 10 years it's been known that the virus would be created in a laboratory in Winnipeg, stolen and smuggled to China. And then there were two plausible stories. We got the wet black market one. The other option was that it would be released from the laboratory accidentally. And then the scary thing that's not scary, it's just like, oh, wow, that sucks, is that there is said to be a backup strain that's a quadbrid. And that one, I believe, is the injection itself because it is said to contain HIV. But these will actually lead to the autoimmune disorders because essentially the messenger of the RNA is then telling the DNA to create something that it doesn't organically have because it's not organic, which is why they need the Trojan horse mechanism to bypass and do what they say it won't do. But once it does, then it reproduces something it doesn't have, and you're going to get all kinds of issues. It's going to be a mess. Dr. Sherry Tenpenny says that it is like 4 to 6 months kick in, and then like 5-year-ish longevity afterwards. So I hope to God that that is not the case. And that's why I'm doing my best to prepare with learning alchemy and ultimately to try to help myself and others who are connected to me grow stronger in faith so that we can step out of the fear. Because in the mental health system, it was the biggest nightmare of my life. And it was truly the scariest and most terrorizing experience that I have been through before because professionals avoided eye contact with patients desperate for connection. They told me on 3 separate occasions that they were doing something more important than my request when I asked for my lip balm, and that they would do it if they had a chance later. And I never got it. But it was the languaging around it. And interesting when I saw when my mom and her husband had come in to visit me and I asked them to get it because I knew that they had a better chance of getting it than I was since I wasn't getting what I was asking for. And when my mom had asked and the nurse gave her the same, doing something more important than your request response, she, oh, I'm so sorry, and of course you are, and it's unimportant, and yeah, of course, and I'm so sorry. And like the supplication of just like, ugh, so sorry, I just realized that we had a very different approach. And that's because I'm a warrior and I always have been. It's just part of who I am. It's one of the archetypes that I came here with. And so that whole experience was a strengthening process where I had to be broken open in order to really be ready for when the time came, which is now. And so I'm grateful for it. But truly, it's a system of terror. And when I was in one place overnight in Simcoe, and it was a great experience because I didn't understand the seriousness of what I just gotten myself into. And then the second day, they wheeled me by gurney to Hamilton down the mountain, 10th floor. Honestly, biggest, like, it's a science experiment. When they rolled me in there, it's like I saw the 3D matrix, and it was just like I saw the paradigm, and it was just like I could see that the guards were actually the patients in disguise, and they had overtaken the guards and then locked them up. So it was a reverse of roles because at the time I was interviewing it to be a corrections officer as well, so it even felt that much more true. But I share that because in that place where I experienced those reactions and the madness of it all, like even coming into the room and then kind of giving me a little bit of trouble and then leaving and closing the door so it looked like it was locked to be able to observe. And I just walked over and I opened it enough for them to know that I knew that I was not locked in. But at that time, I didn't understand about contracts and about the fact that you have 3 days to be able to rescind any contract legally. And legal and lawful is different because we are lawful in terms of being natural sovereign beings, but legal is actually below us because the the fiction can't overtake the creator. And as sovereigns, we are all at the same level. And anything created, a construct, a corporation, is actually beneath us. So if we actually remember that, then we can step into our power more fully. The other point, though, is what I've noticed between medical talks and papers is you don't often have to be, unless it delves very deeply into genetics or other areas with tons of technical lingo. I went through 3 times, and the second time in 2009, I kept saying to myself, a storm is coming for no apparent reason. Then 2 years later, during my latest, Fukushima happened. Fukushima, that's amazing. Yes, exactly. Sherry Tenpenny, Carrie Madej, yes, and several others spoke out of this. Yeah, I think your channel may be being shadow banned, however. Yep, YouTube will not let me enable notifications despite being Oh, good to know. Thank you. I wondered. The people in that type of health treatment are insanely sadistic, especially the orderlies. Yeah. When I got transferred up the mountain the next day to, I called it Hamilton's #1 waterfall. It was West 5th, Hamilton West 5th, which was, waterfall 1 is what the location is. But when I got there, there was actually one of the nurses. There were 2 of them that were walking around with like boot casts on, and it was just like, there was a younger one. So one day I just said like, "Oh, what happened?" And she's like, "Some bitch stomped on my boot, or it stomped on my heel with her boot," and it was just like. And I was just, oh, and I just kind of like walked. It was, oh, okay. And it's just like, I tried not to show that I was terrified by her response and her lack of, I felt like she was revealing what was going to happen if I got stuck in there. And anyway, she never showed up on our floor again. And so it was just, it was a science experiment that I didn't understand I was getting myself into. And essentially, there was a shaman who came over from Africa and came into a mental ward. And basically, what he said he could see were unintegrated energies. And that truly is what's happening. Right now, with all of what is going on, it is exactly that. It's unintegrated energies. And if your energy is out here and you're coming in with new insights you don't know how to integrate yet, you're going to not understand how to actually get it into the heart, which is where then we're centered and able to fully breathe deep and be and slow ourselves down and actually settle our parasympathetic nervous system so that we can actually get into a creative mode and get our conscious mind back online. Because when the sympathetic nervous system is fully in fight or flight mode, then all of the blood is drained out of the conscious mind and it's only going into our instinctual mammalian brain and the reptilian brain that is just about survival. On a side note, I loved what John Voight had said when he spoke last year in defiance of the BLM false flag riots, that the Constitution was inscribed on one of the 4 walls of heaven. Yeah, absolutely. Truly, that's why I've been reading this book to people over the last many weeks and read The Aura before that, and The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz before that, and The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. Because the thing that we have to remember, that I was given advice by Brenda Williams a few years ago, who's been through a lot, and I had connected with her through she had done an interview on Gaia TV with the triad heart wave frequency that is absolutely beautiful, and it actually helps us be able to settle ourselves. And I'm just going to put it on in the background for the last few minutes of fall. And I'm going to check Facebook and see if anybody else had said anything to this video as well. But I'm just going to play the heart wave frequency in the background and say that Brenda told me that the thing that we have to remember is no fatigue and no distractions. You have the Alchemist and the Four Agreements. Beautiful. Yeah. No distractions, no fatigue. So Brenda Williams, there's a transition in the Keeper of the Flame or in the Keeper of the Wave. So it's not something that I can put into more of my stuff just yet, but it's incredibly powerful. And I'm grateful that I was given the opportunity to gain access to it back in 2017 when I reached out to Brenda and she reached back to me, which is the reason that I also say that if you have a heart to connect with somebody, try. Because if you don't, you don't know. And it's the regrets that we don't take. It's the chances that we didn't take that we regret at the end of the day. It's not the ones that we took and didn't pan out. Those, it's just like, well, I tried. Like, I did my best. And that's, as Don Miguel Ruiz says in the Fourth Agreement, the best we can do. I got a copy with a special inscription from my best friend. I don't get to talk to anymore of The Alchemist. Back in 2004, that's beautiful. That's absolutely beautiful. All right, well, I don't see any comments over there. Barry and... All right, guys, there we go. Ben, oh, amazing. Good to see you guys. So on that note, if I love speaking with you, and I concur on the chances. Yeah, ditto. Beautiful. Well, thank you, and I hope that you can enjoy the Triad Wave. Since there is a couple more, there's about another minute, so I would love to just send some love out to this world. I would love for us to understand that even though we know what's going on, or maybe not all of it, but we know enough of it to know it's not good, that we understand we need to rise above, and that we can, and we must, and so we will, because we're here, and we can do this. We have to understand how the body is showing us what is needing to be shifted. It's energy that needs to move, emotion. And I'm not sure whether you're familiar with Louise Hay. She has an amazing book that's called You Can Heal Your Life. And at the back of it, there is a chart that has the physical issues that you've got going on, and then the reason for it. And I'm just going to grab my copy. Right here, this one right here, You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay. And I don't know. It was a treat. Awesome. My pleasure. Let me just see if I can find IBS in the book. No. It doesn't have IBS. Should. It's a common issue. I don't even know what to look up otherwise. IBS? Let me see if it's at the back. It might be in there. If not, we're almost at the end of this. Nope. That was too new a thing, evidently. So it didn't get in there. So I can't give you any insights on that. Currently reading The One Life We're Given. That was given to you by your cousin. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Well, I'm glad that you've got a cousin that is willing to be kind and to share with you what will benefit you, because not only is as supportive, and it is because of the times that we're in and the dividing of the timelines, and people are choosing their path. You're correct. Yeah. So the song restarted without my catching it. So it's just a loop of bliss. And so I hope that this has settled for you, inside of you, some new insights that you can move around and that you can process in a new way, and to understand that anything that shows up in our body is there to help us understand where a shift is required. And so if we're willing to shift into that, if we're willing to just move with what shows up, then we stop fighting ourselves, and then we start to actually see the aspect of us that can win the fight within that is hurting at times. And so if that's useful in any way, every time it hurts or every time you're struggling, instead of going into the pain of it, if you can shift the way that you're experiencing it and love it and thank your bowels for holding the pain that the rest of you didn't have to, or to just have sent it there and for it to be willing to hold that for you. If that's oftentimes where cancer's concerned, for instance. Cancer are the cells in your body that loved you the most, from my perspective, because those are the cells that are willing to hold the dis-ease within the rest of our body. And if we're able to then look at it differently and then love it and then wash it with water and just envision the way that water erodes the rock, and then we really step into the experience of letting all of what is there to serve us and to teach us be purified, and for us to be able to receive the lesson and to ask for that lesson and then to allow it to pass, then we really support ourselves in healing. Definitely been doing your best with cutting out wheat and soy and eating non-GMO meats and veggies. Awesome. Yeah, and our environment is definitely having a lot of consequences, right? With everything that's in the foods and on the lands, and it's all just it's a giant attack that we have to help people remember their power to choose to not participate any longer. So after 2 rounds of the soul searching triad wave, I hope that you're feeling blissful and peaceful and will be able to blissfully go off into your night. And if you're available tomorrow at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, then do join in for Jesus Part 2 and the Ascension, where Michael Seegers is going to actually outline the process of ascension. He's also, I think he's going to mention Serapis Bay, which came up tonight as well in the reading. So exciting times. Hope you can join, and you're very welcome. I am grateful that you joined me this evening and very much look forward to when we can come together again soon. Have a great night. Toodaloo.